Hi there, hope you're well. In this video I'll be taking a look at some tricky tracksaw cuts and some solutions for them. So I'm a big fan of tracksaws, plunge saws, especially when you combine them, pair them up with an MFT style bench like that one. And it occurred to me recently that the reasons I bought a table saw, the narrow rips and cutting wooden wedges, those are actually things that I now do with my plunge saw. And there's a few others too, so let's dive in and take a look at how I do them. We'll start with narrow rips. The problem, if you like, with the tracksaw is that the track actually rests on the workpiece, so any kind of cut in a piece that's narrower than the rail is going to cause you a few problems. The solution to this is usually to make a waist side cut. I always used to use a simple 2mm packer like this one. These days I tend to use the waist side jigs from my YouTube pal Carl at the Strawbite Workshop. I used them recently when I made my loose tenon jig, and whether you're working to a pencil mark or like I was in that video using a piece of 12mm scrap to cut a 12mm wide slice off an 18mm piece of plywood, these little jigs make those kind of cuts accurate and repeatable to a degree that I never got with a simple packer. Carl makes these in a variety of thicknesses to suit the common kerf sizes. I can't remember how much they are, certainly less than £10, and absolutely worth every penny if you're a plunge saw or a tracksaw user. Next up are partial bevels. This is a decorative cut on the edge of a board that just adds a little reveal, a little bit of extra interest to what would have easily been a plain edge. I used this when I made this birch ply bedside cabinet and also on the hallway coat rack. It's worth remembering here that consistency is key. The extent of the bevel, where it's placed, is entirely up to you, but if it isn't consistent from one edge to the next, it's going to look pretty horrible. If your tracksaw stays exactly on the splinter guard when it's tipped over, then straightforward bevels are pretty easy to make, but to get the bevel offset takes a little bit more work. I always find it easiest to make the straight cut first, then line the edge up against the splinter guard, and without moving the workpiece clamp a stop against the edge, but separated by a couple of packers. You'll have to experiment with this because the size of the packer actually depends on the thickness of the material and where you want the bevel to come to. In this case, with 25mm stock, it was an 8mm offset. And with the stop clamped down, I can take away the packers, move the workpiece back, giving me the decorative partial bevel cut that I was after. One of the great things about tracksaws is that they can make incredibly fine trimming cuts, fractions of a millimetre off the edge of a board, but sometimes you do get a little bit caught out, just like I was when I made the window surround in the recent window replacement video. The surround was made as a stopgap for the original window, but management decided that they liked it, and after the new window was fitted it just needed a couple of mil shaving off. The trouble was it already had a little bit of trim around the outside that wouldn't come off without a fight, so I needed to find a way to support the frame and clamp it down. Then add in some support to bring the guardrail up to the same level. I used the waist side jigs again to line everything up, and then I could make the cut. And repeat it all the way around. Finishing with a window surround that just slotted in nicely. Long, thin bevels next, the kind of thing you might want to make for a French cleat, like I did in the Cabinetry Basic series. I did that one the easy way and cut the bevel first, and then made the straight cut to trim it to size afterwards. Sometimes, though, you need to make a cut in a piece that's already to size, like this piece of 12mm birch ply that's trimmed down to 70mm already. I've marked where the bevel needs to be. I've put a low bench dog into the bench to act as a firm stop, and I'm using a piece of scrap for the workpiece to bear against. We're cutting this in half, remember. I don't want that steel bench dog anywhere near the blade. With a sacrificial piece of 6mm bench protector in place, it's obvious that this skinny strip won't support the guardrail. So I'm just taping on a balancer piece, the same thickness, just a little bit wider. And then lining the rail up against the pencil marks and making my cut slowly and steadily. Now normally I'd recommend clamping the rail and the workpiece down for the bevel cut, but when it's fully supported on a bench like this with a firm stop to prevent the workpiece moving, I'm confident in the rail's grippiness for a shallow cut like this. But if you have any concerns whatsoever, then get a clamp on that rail. Don't risk messing up that cut or worse. And finally, cutting wooden wedges. Wooden wedges are just incredibly useful, not just for leveling up wobbly legs, but for all kinds of packing and shimming, whether that's a door frame or a cabinet carcass. They're just really handy things to be able to make to whatever size and angle you need. I normally cut a short section off a wider piece of plain timber, and then mark out the kind of shape that I want using a sliding bevel, first one way and then the next. Now I can fit a low bench dog in as a firm stop and line up the pencil mark against the rail using a scrap piece of 12mm plywood as a temporary fence that can be clamped in place. With that done, I can make the first cut, then flip the workpiece over, line it up for the next cut. But before making it, I'll just add in another scrapwood stop, again just clamped to the bench. Then it's just a matter of making the cut and flipping the work over for easy, consistent wedges. And of course you can always move the stop out a little bit if you want a slightly thicker wedge. So there you go, 5 tricky Tracksaw cuts, easily resolved and mostly with nothing more sophisticated than a roll of sticky tape, some bits of scrap wood and a couple of clamps. So I've been making these kind of Tracksaw cuts for years and years and years, but do let me know in the comments if you've got any more that I haven't shown here, because we'd all love to learn from your experience. I'll call that one done though, I think, for this week. There are links, as always, in the video description down below to everything that I've shown here today, so be sure to take a look. But I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. As always, thanks so much to my Patreon pals and my YouTube members for their amazing support. But I'll call this one done. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.